The topic of the Biennale is a self-driven city, a city that's both automated and autonomous, has the technology to move people in a different way, and also has a different mindset. A self-driven process is a process what person or a community does without getting any external reward. For me, it's really important to bring the two sides, the community and the technology, together. And I think one of the main questions why the topic of the Biennale is related to, for example, self-driving vehicles, is the possibility that can Estonia be a model country for testing this? And is it possible to do it? And the possible aim or the provocation would be that can Estonia be a self-driven country by the year 2030? This would mean in practice that we would change the entire blood system of a country in 15 years and would have radical impacts to all walks of life. So any of you have any ideas? Is it possible, and how to make it as well? I will try to find the button. Oh. Oh, it's working. So anybody have any ideas on this provocation? Mari, perhaps.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Martin, for bringing all these people together and having these excellent speakers here. Well, can this be an end in itself, this self-driving cars or driverless cars? I think it can be one of the measures, but not a goal in itself. So in this sense, I'm doubting that we are looking at the specific goal that should not be the main goal in our cities or in the transportation system. I think car or dependency on cars in US is very high, and like we saw from Ali's presentation, that these driverless cars are actually promising more vehicle kilometers and more trips by car. But what we are sort of interested in as while creating more livable cities and more inclusive cities is to see more pedestrians and to see more cyclists. So I see that we are already, we have lots more, let's say, low-hanging measures and low-hanging fruits to create and change our cities more livable than this technology of driverless cars is promising to us in, let's say, 30 to 50 years.
I can comment maybe on one day. Estonia is actually one of the very few countries today which is quite technology advanced and mobile advanced. We have more than 95% of our territory is covered by the fast 4G mobile network. So in that sense, we are very well prepared for that. On the other hand, and I'm not the expert of the car industry or self-driven cars, but I like to drive the car, for example, to the forest, to these kind of places which are not urban areas. And in Estonia, we are lucky to have very many of those kind of non-urban areas. And I believe this is very challenging for the self-driven cars area to go somewhere which is where maybe not many people are going, and I mean going to some small path in the deep forest and just look around there. And I wouldn't want to, these will be all closed after that when we have just the main roads and nothing else to be able to drive.
Thomas?
Thank you, first of all. Yes, there are two parts of a question. first, whether this is technologically possible. Is there a technology, or will there be a technology? Does Estonia contribute to developing that technology? And this is really hard to answer, but because the technology consists of so many different things. And definitely Estonia cannot provide all the pieces of technology or development themselves. So that would be really ridiculous to assume. The other part is, what do we want to achieve with that technology? What do we want the mobility paradigm to be in 20 or 30 years? Or do we plan it at all? Do we just let it develop itself and kind of settle down itself? When we look at how we move today, I would argue that we haven't really planned to look the mobility system, to look at like it is today. But it has just evolved step by step, road by road, intersection by intersection, bus route by bus route, till we have come to this place where we are. But it's not like 50 years back, people were sitting together and elaborating on what do we want the mobility system to look in 2010. And we were not thinking that, okay, this is where we want to be at 2020. Do we want to have these huge parking lots, and do we want to have freeways or something like this? But up till now, the mobility system has not been planned very well. And now we stand in front of a question then that if this automated driving will happen, do we want to plan what it will look like in the future, or do we just let it flow by itself? The picture that Ali presented, or at least how I saw what he tried to envision us, I would say it's a bit of dystopian. It's not what I would like mobility to be in 20 or 30 years. It kind of reminded me of this animated movie WALL-E, if you have seen that. A small robot in the future, and then finds this, gets onto this spaceship where all people are moving around on these little hover scooters. Everybody is overweight and moving on this hover scooters. And it's kind of this dystopian picture when I think about these small driverless cars that will pick you up at your home and drive you exactly to the destination where you want to go. But this is kind of a thing that will happen, because people kind of tend to be lazy, If given an option to be lazy, then I think people kind of tend to be lazy. And so there really might be this excessive use of motorized transport if this happens. Of course, maybe it's not this way. Maybe people are more sensible. For example, if you ask me how I would like to commute daily, do I want to be in a driverless car and work or watch movies or socialize through internet? Then no, this is not how I want to commute. I want to walk to work 15 minutes. That's my ideal commute. Walking to work about 15, 20 minutes. This is how I want to do it. And the question is, what do people prefer really? What do we want? And right now we are very much focusing on the technology and providing the means, but not asking the question of how we want the mobility system to look like. Did that make any sense at all?
Yes. So, does anybody have any ideas? Steve, maybe, or Ali? What do you think? Can Estonia be such a country?
Well, I first want to acknowledge the excellent comments that were made by Mary and Tamar. I completely agree that livable cities are something that we should plan for. That said, we, like Tamar mentioned, what do we want? What do the people want? We cannot force people to do something that they do not wish to do. And like Tumar said, people, I mean, whether we like it or not, the car is a very attractive mode of transportation. Whether it's in the US, whether it's in London, whether it's in Paris, whether it's in Tallinn, I imagine that cars, percentage are different, but regardless of the city, automobile transportation, modal share, more than 50% of all trips happening in any of the big cities happen using the car. This is not something that we can change, but it's something that we should plan to take into account. We can influence this partially and slightly, and that's how policies come into play. For example, if we want less VMT, then we should develop policies that encourage ride sharing instead of every passenger traveling alone in one of these autonomous vehicles. Then there is an incentive for reducing travel costs and enticing people to share rides, and this would reduce VMT. I'm not sure if this is making sense or not, but I completely agree. We should. Now, the other part is we should definitely plan. I do not think we should sit idle because this is going to happen. And if we want to encourage or foster livable cities and livable communities, then we should plan and we should take into account, we should forecast, see how the amount of demand, we should explore policies that would change these trends and increase livable transportation, increase walking and biking. We should plan our cities and our land uses so that so that walking is competitive to automobile. If walking is not competitive, if the closest hospital is 30 minutes away, people will not talk. Well, everybody who's going to the hospital will take a car, and they will take the autonomous cars. And I think this is where urban planners and architects are extremely important. That said, I'm looking forward to hearing Steve's comment, because I think I feel ashamed talking now given how poetic his presentation was.
Oh no.
I may be at a loss for words, but I hate the word we. The society forces people to do what they don't want to do all the time. And most people don't have the means to resist it. I'm lazy, excessively poetic, and genetically predisposed to be a dreamer. Luckily, I've made it this far on my wits, I guess, but the secret is to reinvent civilization. If you accept the idea that that the future is to invent cities as educational machinery, then let's figure out a curriculum and then the mechanism of delivering it. We have to be much more idealistic, much more inventive. Let's start out by everybody staying home and see what happens and deliver everything to the house. I mean, pretty soon that won't work. I also want to drive to the forest and go for a walk. I mean, we are much more dynamic, and I'm failing to come up with any kind of good answer. But we have yet to invent an interesting way of life for the future. I don't want to work on a laptop in a driverless car, I'll tell you that. I don't want to work in the airplane on the way to Estonia to polish my speech. I don't want anything that's delivered to us now. I'm sorry. I want to sit and drink vodka and talk to interesting people in a cafe. I don't want to do anything that most people do now. Do you? Okay, why don't you say so? Why don't you leave this conference? Yeah, I mean, I'm not really so revolutionary. It's just that I just know that we don't say what we really feel. And it's taken 67 years on this planet to recognize various forms of dishonesty. And I've learned the lesson the hard way. In marriage was one way. Women teach us many things that men are unable to understand, of the variety and multiplicity of life in all its forms. And the other is teaching. I was invited very suddenly to teach industrial design. Of course, I'd never gone to school to learn it. And the first thing I realized is I can't fake this. So I said, I don't know anything. I'm just older than you guys. And I can help you get to where you want to go. It was a good lesson, and I tried to use that in my life. So I think we can benefit from that and don't accept things as they are. Just say no. Does this make any sense at all?
Yeah.
Okay,
And
so I'm done. Okay.
I have to comment about your stuff, saying what you feel and being honest and stuff like that, and making a comment about Mari's ideas as well, that I'm not a techno-optimist. I'm not believing that these cars will solve the whole problem. I'm using this only and purely as a propaganda tool, because the wider audience actually understands change in this thing. This is a tool for the wider audience to kind of start to understand the big changes that are happening in the society. No, it's not about cars. It's about bicycles, it's about pedestrians, it's about all the else. For me, it's really strange. I've been actively promoting bicycles since '97, and now I'm talking about cars. What's going on? It's strange.
What's going on, Martin?
But we are sitting here and doing it. But I have a feeling that actually it's kind of a weapon of choice. Because if you go to a crowd of specialists, all the talks are always the same. But if you take the wider audience look, then it's all still the same, but I want to disrupt it a bit. So, but if anybody in the audience has any questions about the topic at hand, they can shoot right away. Or Mari, what do you think? You probably knew that I'm just a propaganda guy.
No, I know that you are provocating, and you haven't left your bicycle yet. No, but I think just that currently the promises of these driverless cars, the main slogans are that it will be easier to drive. You can do whatever you want during your drive or commute to home. But so it's not creating hyper-local societies or communities. It's going to create hyper-mobile societies. And do we need hyper-mobile cities or communities? Our children's generation, my children are 9 and 13, yours are
7 and 2.5 months.
And 2 months. It said that this generation is going to be the first generation where they expected lifetime is going to be 5 years shorter than ours. And this is because of that we are sitting. We could be standing as well. But most of our days are sedentary. And this kind of normal way of moving around or playing around on the streets has been taken away from our kids. And we should create cities in a way and shape the streets so that we reclaim them back to people, not cars and not technology, and so that our kids are able to cycle wherever they want to and walk wherever they want to and play on the streets.
Yeah, the thing with mobility is everyone who's a guest here doesn't know the local context. Tallinn really doesn't have any planning whatsoever. The only thing that somehow we have the ability to change is the mobility space, the streetscape. So that's why the main topic is mobility. Yeah, and like I said before, it's not about cars. It's about creating new tools to start planning more human-friendly space. I think like a little while ago, the famous Danish architect was here, Jan Gehl, and his book was also published in Estonian. We have to look at the city from a pedestrian point of view, from 5 kilometers per hour. So my idea and thought behind it, why I'm going around talking about this car thing, is this basically enables us a new planning tool. The space planned now by traffic engineers, sorry Ali, is basically changing. Architects and landscape architects are taking over. And I'm hoping that this will actually bring the quality of life change and something like we don't actually have to hurry. The point Mari is making, which is really important and vital to this, is that we have to actually cut down the unnecessary trips constantly made. The new mobility scheme allows a lot of this comfortable travel, but I think the new planning tools enabled by it also enables more dense planning, for example, in the city centers, which could and will change the mobility schemes into more bike-friendly things, for example.
Or will there be self-driving bicycles? Ali, can I whistle a bicycle, a shared bicycle in 30 years or 20 years? Can I?
Well, actually, yes, there are self-driving bicycles.
Nice. Great to hear that.
Well, Martin said that he provocates, but one thing he did, he asked Mari and me to this panel, and he knows that we are pretty much supporting the cause that he said. So let me try to provocate. Yeah, I like to walk to work 15 minutes. I like bicycles, public transport, etc. And I think that the picture Ali gave us was a bit dystopian, but still, cars are cool, and that's a fact. You can look it up from Wikipedia. Cars are cool. You like to drive a small sports car on an empty freeway at night? Okay, so that's kind of a human thing to do. Do we want to take away that emotion, that positive emotion from people? I'm not even talking about is it self-driving or not self-driving, just the car as a thing that you own, which is yours, you nourish it and tune it and whatever, and you take it on a slow ride, on a fast ride, or whatever. It's a cool thing. So how do we overcome this conflict here? I don't have a question to that. Anybody else does?
Ali, you seem to be nodding. You like cars as well?
Well, actually, I do not. But what is the most valuable asset that we have in life? Time. The only thing that we cannot gain back is time. So money, we can lose time, money, and get it back. But time, the time you use, you cannot get it back. And time is the primary force driving mobility. So humans they usually tend to choose whatever saves them the most time. Now, I do have one comment about, so Martin, you mentioned we need to reduce unnecessary trips. Now, this comment is one that I strongly disagree with. I think perhaps you just, the way you put it in words is not what you meant. I think what you meant is we need to reduce unnecessary trips that are made by the car. But as our job as not traffic engineers, but as transportation engineers, our job is to help people make more trips. We should always make travel easier. by car and by bus and by walking and by every possible mode, because most people, they do not travel because they enjoy travel. They travel because they want to go grocery shopping. They travel because they want to go meet someone. They travel because they want to work. So travel itself is a driven activity. It's not an independent activity. Very few people, or in the bigger scope of things, if 1 million trips happen every day, perhaps 100 or 1,000 of them are only done for the purpose of traveling, for going into the woods and just traveling. But most of the trips, they happen because people need to do something else. And our job as transportation engineers, because travel is a human right, our job is to make their travel easier. Now, I agree with you. We should always try to reduce motorized transportation because it's unhealthy, because of the exact same example that Tumar gave, Wally. We need to encourage people to walk and bike more because it's healthier, it's more beneficial for their health. So I hope this answers.
I studied architecture and city planning, and I think that architect's job is to figure out the reasons why people go somewhere, not the transportation or mobility itself. So basically we are planning functions, the reasons why people go somewhere. And this is the case of, for example, cities, why cities and city centers need to be denser, that then people would have more possibility not to take the motorized vehicle, but to walk or bike and have other means of options. And basically the landscape architects need to start planning walks Steve talk was like walking in a nice environment very calmly. The architects should start doing that as well, because in terms of space. Because very important aspect about the self-driven mobility mode is the psychogeographical aspect. The thing that when you sit in a car and the car goes somewhere and you come out, I also really like driving and machines, these heavy kind of machines. But with my experience riding around Estonia and the rest of places, I know how from here how to get to Mõisaküla or whatever point in Estonia. But the person who has never looked at the map and is just arriving in a place doesn't have this knowledge. He or she might not know even how to get from Tallinn to Paide. The thing is that architects need to plan this route with some kind of landmarks, spatial things that help people to figure themselves out where they are spatially. So I think the architect's role is beginning to grow in this spatial mode.
Yeah, you touched upon the point of reducing travel demand, reducing motorized travel demand. Another interesting question that I've been thinking about and have not found the answer, and maybe I'm just putting out here is, do we want to reduce the demand for mundane fetching stuff, like going to a groceries or getting a drill from your friend or something like this? Because automated driving would also enable that. But it's not only about automated driving so that you are in a car, but it can be also automated fetching things. You have either drones or some kind of small boxes that drive around and get your groceries from your shop and etc. So we could basically reduce this kind of movement, this kind of trips, that you don't go to the groceries anymore and you don't go to get new sneakers for your kid at a shop that I plan to do today. But is this a good thing, actually? Because what is a city? For me, it's people on on the streets or in the urban space. It's not houses next to each other. It's the people that fill the space between the houses. And maybe this fetching things is such an important part of getting people to the streets, getting people to the outside. And if you remove that, what will happen to the city, or what will happen to people being in the public space and feeling like a community?
I can comment here that that might be even not in a very distant future. What we are discussing here right now is that we have actually, at Ericsson, we have done one test in Gothenburg in Sweden with delivery of the packages to the car. And if you have a car in the future, everything connected as one internet big cloud, then it's possible to make it happen that the delivery guy is not delivering you the package what you have ordered in the internet or some whatever, groceries, whatever, to your home, which means that you have to be there again from between 1 hour slot, which might actually cause you unnecessary driving and driving again back to work or somewhere else you need to go. But let's say they can position your car, find where you are, and they will deliver it in the parking lot on your office. And this was proven actually very successful test case. And that's what people really liked, actually. And I think that can be also one way of course, how to reduce all this unnecessary travel in a distant future. And other thing, I think, is that we can use the technology in some less extent way than maybe putting everything automatically moving around the cars. But we could, when we start thinking and seeing already right now, this kind of automatically or assisted driving. And I mean, who would never want to have car warning you or not even stopping you or hitting the other car or avoiding these all kind of collisions. So I think we could see mix of different ways between on this just the way how we act today and before we even go to the full automatic. There are very many ways what can benefit the society on technology point of view.
Mari, you have any ideas about these little robots bringing you stuff and thus removing the extra mobility done by humans now? Do you think it can help, or what's your ideas on it?
There is always been this problem of the last mile in this logistics, and also in the efficiency of people's movement. Like Ali was explaining that sometimes of the day or some parts of the network, buses are running very inefficiently. But also there are many also in a way low-tech ways of like crowdsourcing this kind of package, the movement of packages, so that people actually moving from one part of the city, either walking or cycling or taking public transport or driving their cars, can also carry these parcels to the right destination. So, but it's about this consumerism anyway. So the consumption, do we have to, or how far we have to facilitate this consumer society? Just all these online deliveries and or on-time deliveries. Do we have to?
Actually, Mari brought out the topic that's my favorite in this whole sphere, is the thing that one of the things that the self-driving thing promises or enables us is not only to change what we use, but how we use it, and basically to change from consumer society to a more shared economy. So the car has always been a modernistic symbol of freedom. Everybody wants it. But if it becomes a practical tool from point A to point B and loses its status, then some theorists say that this is a kind of a threshold to a more collaborative consumption society or a shared economy society. And this is actually what I'm actually also passionate about, that I think we need to find a kind of a healthy balance, like Mari said, that yeah, there could be these robots doing it, but still there are other more simple ways of doing it as well. But the thing is, if people lose the symbol of freedom like the car is in the mainstream now, then a lot other possibilities of sharing stuff is possible in a bigger scale. So, Steve, what do you think about people sharing and not buying stuff?
Is it working?
Yes.
Okay, yes. I don't know, but New York City is my answer to everything. It works so well, as much as a pain in the ass as it is to live in sometimes. It's a society without cars. The delivery system is brilliant. The urban life is brilliant. You get anything you want in your own small sphere or a larger one. The aging metro is still working well, actually. Delivery of packages has this intermediary of the building supervisor or concierge. Packages are arriving all day by messenger on bicycles, on foot, on cars, by FedEx, by other private delivery systems, kind of night and day, stored downstairs. There are email systems within the building that notify you when packages arrive. It's remarkably ecological, actually, when you consider how much commerce is done in a day. And you dare not drive a car. In fact, even there are times on a rainy, early evening you cannot find a taxi, but you can always get around. It's an interesting case. And the excessive density actually makes it possible. It's an interesting case. Other smaller cities can't support that, and Los Angeles is one of them. You take your car. Yeah, New York City. Does that answer your question? I suppose not. Okay.
So, but okay, I'm following from the New York issue is again making a point to and kind of referring to Jan Geel and basically his work on Broadway and the thing what we actually can do in practice now already is the thing that we can. If the mindset is changed, we know that new tools are coming, then we can start planning the city already now differently. And one point and a lot of good practice examples is we can already start making the city street design more human-friendly. And for doing this, we don't actually need to invest a lot, but we need to have good ideas and make this kind of tactical acupuncture or needle treatment to the city, choosing the strategical small locations and helping them to flourish. What do you think? How and can we do it in Estonia maybe? Kind of taking these small places and starting to push the life quality further. Or what are you thinking? Ideas? Or if anybody from the audience has any questions, then please, this is your time. Anybody? No.
I can comment you answer that. I think we should really take in Estonia what unique we have. I mean, I have to say to Steve, sorry that I have been quite a few times to New York, but I don't like that city at all.
I agree.
And I would never make my hometown at all. And but I mean, living in Estonia is something very unique, but you can't make it in most of the places in the I mean, if you go to Asia or whatever, I mean, it's totally different world. Totally, I mean, there are people. One suburb of one city is probably 2 times bigger than the whole country on population here. But what we have, and there is remote areas, I mean, living and just not seeing your next neighbor in maybe a few kilometers even, I mean, this is quite unique. You go out and you can listen and no, there is no noise around and no cars just driving by. I mean, this is something that we should really keep as a unique value, and now then integrate it into this, I mean, modern society, how to make it life possible. We don't want to probably go to Stone Age and start living again in that way, but we want to kind of enjoy the benefits of the modern society, but we could do it also in a way that is quite different on maybe what most people in other worlds, and that have to be that we have a choice to live in some other way.
I agree. We have to take what's here already. We cannot invent a whole lot of new stuff. But does anybody from the audience have any ideas, questions, remarks? I am starting to run with the microphone towards the hand that is starting to raise.
Hello. I come from Riga, and every day to get to the work, I need to go for 15 minutes through the main street, Magistral, where there's one tree. Then I get to the train and ride for 10 minutes. Okay, then I see lots of trees. But how can I, I don't know, change anything? What can I do? How can I speak to people to open their yards? Maybe, I don't know, how to replan the inner quarters or find some new routes or something. How can we change the walking system, or can we interfere in this street system? What is existing already, and how can we change maybe people, I don't know, point of view, for them to open their own private space to invite somebody else to go through their yards, their personal, I don't know, residential buildings. They have a shared partnership over the courtyard, and so, yeah, how can we speak to people and say then we're friendly, we want to just enjoy the greenery, and then, well, yeah. If you follow, maybe
organize a street festival, for example, where people can meet each other and get to know each other. I think when people don't know their neighbors, so they don't go outside so much to the next doors, or they just drive to another part of the city, or but if you make an event, if you just take the really a neighborhood level, and create their excuses for people to go outside and stay outside, so they start to network more and start to know each other more on a local scale, not just the people they know from school or work or bar in the center. Because I think the neighborhood where you used to live and I'm still living, it is more lively now than it used to be 10 years ago, with some new cafes, new people moving in, new services on the spot. So I at least experienced that there are more people on the streets, and there are more friendly eyes on the streets. So this is one. And when the car traffic on the street doesn't dominate so much, let's say, of course, it doesn't mean it has to be car-free, but let's say it's lower speeds, it facilitates walking, it facilitates kids' independent walks to schools, which is very important for the whole lifetime, let's say, that our kids are able to independently go to school. This is very important. to local schools. The more there are local people in these hyper-local spots. This is
my bullshit bingo. Yes. And also, from an architectural and planning side, I think this kind of local tactical activism things help to basically raise spatial awareness. The thing that people are more aware where they live, why they live there. There are more events happening because they tend to notice more. And I think if people live in an environment that they start to notice and identify with more, then it all ends out to be a happier life, somehow like this. But you have to be a good example yourself to start with this. This is how we do it.
Thank you.
Any more questions from the audience? Oh.
Shall I start? Because I would like to comment to what the other lady was saying. I'm from Amsterdam, and that's quite a cramped city. I'm amazed, actually, at the amount of space that's spent on parked cars. So one of the main charming results of the autonomous vehicles would be that they could drive themselves away and don't have to be parked in front of all the houses and offices taking up space. So I think if you want to get people on the streets, there should be space, because also in my street where I live, it's mostly for driving and for parking, and there's very little place left. Oh, sorry, speak louder. Very little space left for either green or getting together. So personally, I'm all in favor for autonomous vehicles, and I maybe would like to ask the question back to the panel, because it seems like even though so many topics and variables have been introduced today that are being impacted by autonomous vehicles, we still seem to approach them as cars. And I think maybe not approaching them as a sort of a new car, but a totally different way of getting around and living can open up some new ideas and opportunities for the future cities. Thank you.
Completely agree with that one. Don't know what to say. But yeah, it's not about cars. It's about new mindset. Any other questions? Wow.
Yeah, I have the mic already. So, from every time when I hear someone speaking about the autonomous vehicles, it seems they think that the amount of vehicles is gonna lessen since people can share. But wouldn't it be that people would want their own private vehicle, so it wouldn't lessen the density of the traffic? It would just be more people being like single, I have my own vehicle, I go with there. And yeah, you can not park in front of the house, but you would need parking lots, and that would take up some space. So, yeah.
I think it will be a mixture of people sharing, and some people will definitely want to be owners of some vehicles, but it will be a mixture of everything. There is no ideal. There is there are really difficult choices in the space between the ideal and the real, and the ideal will never come. So it will be a mixture of all of that, I think. Any other questions?
Yeah,
oh, yeah.
I already have a microphone, so I'm just going in the light. My question is a little bit like from the social part of the city, because when I think of the city is a pretty complex organism. It doesn't really only consist of transport, it also consists of people and people relationships. And when I think about, well, coming back to that concept of self-driving cars, how do you think it will kind of influence the community of people? Because, for example, when there are people who are traveling every day, for example, on buses, on trains, they, from time to time, they meet each other, the same people. They know that they are traveling, they are getting acquainted, and yeah, they basically know each other and start communicating. But don't you think that self-driving idea could lead to social destruction of the city?
Not complete, but it has its risk. Yeah. The thing that you cannot meet the same person on the bus because there is no bus. Sometimes you can in the small van, like for example, Ali was explaining. The transportation system will be changed into not bigger buses, but rather smaller and modular ones. The social kind of segregation, this is a kind of a difficult question. I myself, I'm saying no, it can go in a good way as well, but there are risks for sure. I don't know what Mari is.
I don't know. I think that the impacts on the traffic behavior or travel behavior, I think, are very different in LA compared to maybe European cities where we have high share of walking and public transport. So maybe socially, the impacts in US cities where we have the share of public transport and walking is maybe even less than 10% of all trips made, is the social impacts are maybe less compared to the ones that we have in Europe, where maybe we will have less walking, less public transport. So in US, you might even experience maybe more social interaction when you start to meet people instead of driving alone, maybe sitting in a shared van or so. So I think it has a lot of rebound effects in terms of communication and social activity, and it really depends on the actual current situation in each individual city.
One thing to comment maybe on that is, it's possible actually, if you, like Ali was saying, that I mean, you can have a small, maybe cars, like you have 2, 3 people, 4 people riding the car. It's quite easy to make this kind of profiling and put really those people together in the cars, which you would like to have a common interest, for example. So you can know that, okay, I want to drive in the car, but with that kind of people. So that should be quite easy to make, and maybe in that way it can even increase this, because I mean, in a bus, I mean, you might be just standing next to the person who you have no common interest and you don't even want to socialize at all, but that could give you just quality time for half an hour to discuss common interests.
Thanks.
You had the answer ready, that's great. This actually,
it's actually interesting to think even that they have, I just heard that it's, I think it was Taxify, a Estonian company, who made this app for sharing the ride between Tallinn and Tartu, and basically you can find the similar way somebody to ride the car.
With similar interests?
Yeah, something like that. I think they are developing it probably further, but, and then, I mean, if you are talkative or you want to be a silent person like that.
I have a question.
Yeah.
If you're, how do you see arranging? I'm here. Sorry, can I sit? I don't want to stand. How do you see arranging all different transportations when? Because I see that you can't do very radical stuff like losing a car, because cars are important for people, even like emotionally. But when you put like a self-driven car and the normal car like next to each other, then the self-driven car is not. There is no point in that. I mean, like they're not working together that well as they would be separately. But if you have like so many different transportations, how you're going to arrange them? Because even right now, like yesterday, I saw a good scheme where like for I also like bikes, and if you would put a bike road like more like on a sidewalk, not next to riding cars, but right from parking cars, so it would be like more secure. But if we're gonna like, we have now already so many different ways how to move, and if you're adding one more, then isn't it gonna be like too messy? Or we must like cancel something, but it seems too radical.
Hey Ali, maybe this is a question for you. How do the machines operate in all the various different mobility modes, like together with regular cars, bicycles, all the ones, all the dirtiness of the real world?
Well, that's an excellent point. And one of the benefits, so we have been talking about bicycles and pedestrians. Actually, one of the benefits of autonomous vehicles is that we will have less crashes with pedestrians and bicycles. Well, actually, there is an application, smartphone application right now where I think it was Mercedes-Benz, their new autonomous vehicles, and the vehicle was actually able to communicate with pedestrians. So if it notices that a pedestrian is crossing the highway in front of it, then it communicates with the pedestrian. The smartphone of the pedestrian says, oh, pay attention, you're crossing the path of a vehicle, and then the vehicle stops and displays an image on the pavement showing an image of a crosswalk so that the pedestrian can cross safely. So the autonomous vehicles are going to be, even in a mixed share mode where they are sharing the highway with bicycles and pedestrians, they are going to be safer than a non-autonomous vehicle. That said, just like I think the example is similar to when the vehicles were first invented. So in the early 1900s, we had the horses and the carriages using all the highways. And now suddenly we have this steel vehicle that is driving within this mixture. But because this new vehicle was a lot more beneficial than animals, because animals in the cities, they were causing a lot of health hazards in terms of their manure and their organic waste. Everybody welcomed these new vehicles. At the beginning, they were sharing the highway with carriageways, and once they got more popular and people saw the benefits of this new system over the old one, suddenly we started having highways where carriageways and horses are no longer allowed. It's only for the car. And I think the model with these autonomous vehicles is going to be the same. At the beginning, they will be sharing the system with all other transportation modes, and they will prove to be safer and better. And once they get more popularities, some highways will be restricted only to autonomous vehicles.
Okay, thank you, Ali, for that. And I think we are wrapping up here, because sitting in this stage with this light coming into our eyes is kind of burning our brains. Let's continue our talk in the more intimate sphere, maybe. And thank you for listening, and thank you for being here, Steve, Mari, Erik, and Erki, and Thomas. And thank you for listening, and Ali, of course, from California. Thank you for staying up all night and joining us here in Tallinn. Yeah.
Thank you all. Thank you, Martin, for your moderation.
Thank you, everybody, for listening. Let's have some free time.